The Sudirman Cup. It is the competition that determines who the strongest badminton nation is, with each match within the competition consisting of one match from each of badminton's 5 disciplines. If a team wishes to win, then a simple must is having top players in at least 4 of those disciplines, ideally all 5, combined with depth within those disciplines too. It's for this simple reason that throughout its 36-year history, not many teams have been able to lift the coveted Sudirman Cup trophy. In fact, across its 18 editions, only 3 nations have done so: Indonesia, Korea and China. China is by far the most successful nation, having not just been in 15 consecutive finals since 1995, but they've won 13 of them. Of the other 2 nations, it is Korea who is clearly the second most successful. They've managed to lift the Sudirman Cup trophy 4 times, and on top of this have 14 medals. However, despite being the second most successful nation in Sudirman Cup history, when Korea last won in 2017, it wasn't seen as expected, or even understandable. In fact, it was quite the opposite. This win by the Korean team was so shocking and so surprising that the BWF media later dubbed it the Miracle of May.
2017 produced many memorable moments, but the miracle in May in Australia's Gold Coast stood out. Korea pulled off one of the biggest upsets in the competition's history.
But why? Why was a win by the second most successful nation in a competition's history seen by all as a miracle? Well, in this video, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about, shedding light on what was, and still is, the Sudirman Cup's most surprising result. This is the Korean squad that travelled to the Gold Coast for that 2017 Sudirman Cup. Of course, if you aren't a badminton fan or follower, then this list of names likely means very little to you. But if you are, then there will be a few names that will jump out at you immediately, and I'm going to guess 3 of them right now: Seo Seung-jae, Kim Won-ho and Cha Yu-jung. The reason for this guess is right now in 2025, these 3 are huge stars for Korea. Seo Seung-jae is the current men's and mixed doubles world champion, winning the mixed doubles with Cha Yu-jung, and Kim Won-ho is the current Olympic silver medalist in the mixed doubles. Not only that, but together Kim Won-ho and Seo Seung-jae only recently, as of recording, won badminton's oldest and most prestigious tournament, the All England. However, back in 2017, all 3 of these players were rather unknown. Kim Won-ho was only 17 years old at the time and still a junior. Cha Yu-jung was the most successful of these 3, as she was ranked 14 in the world in the mixed doubles with Choi Sol-gyu, but she had had very little top-level success by the time of the Sudirman Cup. And Seo Seung-jae, Korea's most famous and successful current doubles player, was actually a singles player at the time, and didn't even have a world ranking in doubles or mixed when this Sudirman Cup started. Sticking on the subject of world rankings, what is interesting about this Korean Sudirman Cup squad is that it does not include their highest ranking pair in either the men's or mixed doubles. Well, it had one half of these pairs, as in the men's doubles, Choi Sol-gyu was a part of Korea's 3 highest ranking pairs at the time, but none of his partners within those partnerships, Kim Gi-jung, Ko Sung-hyun and Kim Jae-hwan, were a part of the squad. And in the mixed doubles, Kim Ha-na was in the Gold Coast, but her regular partner Ko Sung-hyun was not. Kim and Ko were, at the time, ranked 3rd in the world. Now, I don't know all the reasons for this. There is a rather big explanation centred around the men's doubles events, which I will get to later. But, reasons aside, these omissions of top players and pairs does show that the Korean squad in 2017 wasn't at full strength. That's not to say, though, that they didn't have some great players in their midst. Chung Won-ho was the world number 2 men's singles player at the time, and would go on to become a world bronze medalist at that year's World Championships. Sung Ji-hyun was a very experienced women's singles player, was world number 5 and was a former world bronze medalist in 2015. And lastly, in the women's doubles, they had Chang Yi-na and Lee So-hee, a pair who were ranked 3rd in the world and not long before the Sudirman Cup had won the All England. However, what should be noted about the women's doubles players is that whilst Korea did have their top-ranked pair, the aforementioned Chang and Lee, they only brought one half of their second-ranked pair, Jung Kyung-yun and Shin Sung-chan, with Shin missing. Jung and Shin were ranked at the time just 1 place below Chang and Lee at world number 4. What all of this means is that whilst this Korean team certainly had its stars, it was a team that wasn't filled with its best current players. It wasn't a team firing on all cylinders. It was a team that really only had 3 disciplines strongly covered, and in the Sudirman Cup it is widely known that to do well you need at least 4 strong disciplines, if not all 5. What makes this point even stronger is that when looking at those 3 stronger disciplines with a keener eye, there are some weaknesses within them too. They are a little thin, as outside of their top players or pair, the rest were either very lowly ranked or lacked experience. This means that those top players or pairs would unlikely get to rest and could ill afford to have any bad days. That adds a lot of pressure and leaves very little wiggle room. Like most successful teams having all disciplines covered, generally the winning teams have multiple options within that. This Korean team really didn't. Okay, so that's quite a fair bit of information already, so let me quickly surmise it. Out of the 5 disciplines, this Korean team only had established and successful players in 3 of them. Within those 3 disciplines, they only had 1 high-ranked player or pair. In the mixed doubles, their highest-ranked pair was missing. In the men's doubles, 1/2 of their top 3 ranked pairs was missing. And in the women's doubles, 1/2 of their second highest pair was missing as well. A large majority of their squad was vastly inexperienced at the highest level, and as a result this Korean team was unseeded. An important fact I'll add now, as no unseeded team had ever won the Sudirman Cup before, and none has done so since. So yeah, based on all of this alone, the fact this team managed to win the tournament is rather miraculous. However, I'm here to tell you that this is just scratching the surface, as the first thing I did when looking into this was compare this winning Korean team with all the winning teams of the past. And when I did, something emerged that makes what that 2017 Korean team did even more miraculous. As I have already mentioned a couple of times in this video already, what makes a really strong Sudirman Cup team, a Sudirman Cup winning team, is strength across all 5 disciplines. What can really add to this is having 2 players or pairs in each discipline, allowing for rotation of a team. This can help mitigate fatigue that can build up throughout competition, and it also allows for flexibility in selections. Some players are just stronger or better suited against certain opponents than others, so having options is a huge advantage. This is something pretty much every single Sudirman Cup winning team has had. However, there is something even more specific than this when it comes to all those winning teams, something they all have in common. To show this, let me first put up all the teams who have won the Sudirman Cup. Now, in a second, I'm going to show you how many players within each winning squad at the time of the competition had competed in either a World or Olympic final. Quick side note though, the figure you'll see isn't the total number of finals, simply the number of players within that team's squad who have been in at least one of those finals. Right, and here they are. I'll give you a moment to have a look. Now I've given you a moment, what should have become rather apparent is that pretty much all of the teams on this list have a number of players having major final experience, all except for 2. The 2017 Korean team with just 1 finalist, and the 1995 China team who actually had 0 at the time of competition. Now, I know what you're thinking, that 1995 China team had no players who had contested a World or Olympic final when they won, so surely that win is even more surprising, or even more of a miracle. And yes, I get that. At the time, that 95 win for China was seen as a surprise. The title on the front page of volume 23 of the World Badminton magazine even says, "China stuns the world." However, those statistics I showed you are lacking a little bit of context. It doesn't paint the full picture. For starters, China's top women's singles player from that 1995 edition, Ye Xiaoying, would go on to become world champion the following week. And Ye Xiaoying wasn't the only player in that 95 squad that made their mark on the game not long after. That 1995 China squad had within it a number of players who would go on to become world and Olympic champions within just the next 2 years, with 2 of those going on to become the most dominant pair in badminton history, Gufei and Gu Jun. In fact, let's pull up that list of squads again, but this time let's extend the time frame of World and Olympic finalists to within 2 years after them winning the Sudirman Cup. As you can see, whilst the 95 China team now has 4 players who have contested a World or Olympic final, the Korean team stays at just 1. If I extend this to 4 years, then Korea does get another World finalist, which was Lee So-hee in 2021, but it's still way off China's 95 team. It only really grows when you go even further, 6 years in fact, to 2023, when Seo Sung-jae and Cha Yu-jung won the World Championships, with Seo Sung-jae actually doing the doubles-double. For me, these figures are quite astonishing and really put into perspective just how much weaker and less experienced that 2017 Korean squad was in comparison to all other winning teams throughout history. I mean, if you take the average number of World and Olympic finalists within a winning squad, 4 years after their win, it is 9.2. Korea had just 2. That, to me, is mind-blowing. On average, most Sudirman Cup winning teams have over 7 more players who have been in one or more of badminton's biggest finals. But it gets even more mind-blowing when you dig a little deeper, because all these figures only show the number of players on a squad who have contested either a World or Olympic final. It doesn't account for players who have done that multiple times, or what colour medal they came away with. So for the 2017 Korean team and the 1995 China team, let's look at that. And for fun, let's add bronze medalists to this too and expand our scope to 6 years after the year in which they won the Sudirman Cup. As you can see, just like with the previous statistic, at the time of the competition, the Korean team has the edge. However, after just 2 years, that 1995 China team suddenly has a number of world and Olympic medals, mainly gold, showing that whilst the 95 China win was stunning at the time and seen as a surprise, in hindsight their team was filled with unimaginable talent. Talent that was ready and able to take on the world pretty much immediately. Oh, and another small thing I haven't mentioned about this stat is that I couldn't find the listed names for the full China squad that travelled to Lausanne that year. These stats were pulled for the players who actually played in the matches, combined with the podium shot from the TV broadcast. I have no doubt China brought other players who could have easily been present or future world and Olympic medalists. For the Korean team, from a squad size that almost doubles that of the 95 China squad, even after 6 years the number of medals isn't close, especially in the Olympics. And this is even the case if I extend the 6 years to 7 and include Kim Won-ho's silver from Paris. Personally, I think this statistic alone is a strong enough one to really label Korea's 2017 win as miraculous. But I am not done yet, because there are still 2 more factors that I think further cement this result as a miracle. The first of which requires me to not compare the 2017 Korean team against all other winning teams, or even the 1995 China team, but instead something a little closer to home. I need to compare them to the winning Korean teams of old. Once again, here are the number of world and Olympic medalists that the 2017 Korean team had within their squad when they turned up to that year's Sudirman Cup, as well as those numbers after 2, 4 and 6 years. As you can see, after 6 years, the 2017 Korean team had a total of 4 gold medals, 2 silver medals and 3 bronze medals, for a total of 9 medals. Now, working backwards, let's add the previous Korean winners. The 2003 Korean team had 7 gold medals, 9 silver medals and 3 bronze medals, for a total of 19. The 1993 Korean team had 11 gold medals, 5 silver medals and 7 bronze medals, for a total of 23. And finally, the 1991 Korean team had 14 gold medals, 6 silver medals and 10 bronze medals, for a ridiculous total of 30. Yeah, you don't need me to tell you, that is quite the difference. What makes this even more remarkable is that back then the World Championships was held every 2 years as opposed to every year now, and in 1991 the Olympics hadn't even made its debut, and when it did, mixed doubles was omitted, an event Korea had the top pair in the world of the time. Like I said, it is quite a difference, but the sheer numbers isn't the only reason why I am using this comparison. No, it is to highlight something else, and that is in which disciplines Korea have always been so strong in. Simply put, it has always been the doubles events. Of all those medals, which when totaled together equals 81, only 5 of them come from the singles events. That's just 6.17%. And this tracks when you look at how the 91, 93 and 2003 Korean teams won their Sudirman Cup. In 1991 and 1993, in the final they lost both singles matches, but won all 3 of the doubles events, with the legendary Park Ju-bong being instrumental, winning both his men's and mixed doubles in both finals.
They've done it. They've done it. Strong team from Korea, led by this man heading towards camera now, Ju-bong Park.
And in 2003, whilst Lee Hyun-il did deliver a huge point when he defeated Chen Hong, Kim Dong-moon and Ra Kyung-min absolutely destroyed the world and Olympic champions at the time, Zhang Jun and Gao Ling, 11-8, 11-love. And then Lee Dong-soo and Yu Yong-sung delivered the final point and won the cup for Korea. Interesting side note, Lee Dong-soo and Yu Yong-sung were Korea's second pair, giving more weight to what I said about having good depth within your disciplines. In 2017, this couldn't have been more opposite, as it was their men's and mixed doubles that were the team's weakest disciplines by far. This was especially the case in the men's doubles, where their highest ranking pair was, well, they didn't actually have a pair present that was even world ranked. Now, there was a reason for this. Korea was in the midst of rebuilding following the retirement of 3 very successful pairs following the Rio Olympics a year prior. 3 pairs who at the World Championships in 2014 won gold, silver and bronze. For this video though, I don't really need to dwell on that point much more. The crux of it is that Korea's historically strongest disciplines which had won them all 3 of their previous Sudirman Cups, were now their weakest. And when combined with the fact this team had by far the lowest number of world and Olympic medals in comparison to other winning teams, well, again, I'm left with that word, miraculous. Okay, so I've looked at the 2017 Korean team themselves. I've looked at what historically makes a winning team in general and for Korea. Now there's just one more piece to this puzzle, and that piece lies in the team that Korea beat in the final. Of course, I have to talk about the Chinese team from that 2017 final. In that 2017 final, Korea were up against China, the 10-time champions and a team that hadn't been beaten in 14 years. This fact alone was enough to have them as the hot favourites for that final, but what added to this lay in the players that made up the Chinese squad. Here is the 19-person China squad that travelled to the Gold Coast. It is a squad that is full to the brim with current and soon-to-be world and Olympic champions. Let me run through a few for you. Lin Dan, 2008 and 2012 men's singles Olympic champion, 5 times men's singles world champion, and widely regarded as the GOAT of badminton. Chen Long, the 2016 men's singles Olympic champion and 2-time men's singles world champion. Fu Haifeng, 2012 and 2016 Olympic men's doubles champion, 2008 Olympic silver medalist in the men's doubles, and a 4-time men's doubles world champion. Zhang Nan, 2012 mixed doubles Olympic champion, 2016 men's doubles Olympic champion, a 3-time world mixed doubles champion, and he would win the world men's doubles title later in 2017. And on the subject of future champions, they had Zhang Siwei and Wang Yachong, a pair who would win 4 world titles and the 2024 Olympic gold. Cheng Chin-chen and Jai Fan, who would also win 4 world titles and the 2024 Olympic gold. Wang Dongping, who would win the 2020 Olympic mixed doubles title, and Chen Yufei, who would win the women's singles title in 2020. If I was to summarise this team, I would say it was like taking the 95 China winning team with all its youthful and brimming talent, and on top add true legends of the sport who had won all there is to win in badminton. On paper, it was a team that seemed impossible to beat, especially by a Korean team with pretty much none of that. What's interesting is that if you look at the China team that was selected for the 2017 final, only one player in it hasn't contested an Olympic final, and even that player, Liu Kai, has won the All England. So yeah, with everything I have said so far, the Korean team's lack of experience, especially in major finals, the fact their historically strongest disciplines were now their weakest, and they're up against a team that was filled to the brim with experience and insane young talent, plus a dynasty behind them, well yeah, I'd definitely say that Korea winning was easily the biggest surprise in Sudirman Cup history, and worthy of being called the Miracle of May. I could have very well finished the video there. I think I've laid out a number of key points that would bolster the claim of this win being deemed a miracle, but I just know that the vast majority of you watching will now be left with a rather large question. It's likely a question you wondered even when you first clicked on this video. How the hell did Korea actually win? Well, I am not going to break down every single match. My videos are notoriously very long and I don't want to add to that. Plus, to be honest, you don't need to break down this final too much to find the reasons behind Korea winning. I believe there are just 3 key things. 1, Chen Qing-chen doubling up in the semis and being fatigued for the final. Chen Qingchen was one of the rising stars of world badminton at the time, having exploded onto the scene, winning numerous titles. She was incredibly successful in both women's doubles with Jia Yifan and mixed doubles with Zheng Siwei, and would go on to reach the final of that year's World Championships in both, winning the women's. As I have alluded to before, one key element to being successful in an event like this is mitigating fatigue. This is easily done when a team has plenty of depth like China. And China did just that in 2017, as throughout the group stages, Chen only played in one event, and was even rested in the quarter-finals against India. However, in the semi-finals against Japan, she was put into both the women's and mixed doubles, 2 matches which ended up totaling 2 hours in length. And although for most top stars this isn't impossible to recover from, what made it difficult for Chen was that by playing the 5th and final match, she finished very late, and thus had little time to recover for the final the next day. In head coach Zhang Jun's own words, "Chen Qingchen played 2 matches in the semi-final. The second match finished quite late and there was no time to recover. We finished our team meeting only by 2 AM. But we decided to persist with Chen and Jia Yifan because they had good results against the Korean pair." 2. Pressure. This was something else that head coach Zhang Jun alluded to, that the pressure of the situation got to the Chinese team, especially their mixed doubles pair of Lu Kai and Wang Yachong. They may have been the All-England champions and world number 2s, so therefore had a bit more experience and a higher ranking over their Korean opponents, but this may have actually been a negative. A Sudirman Cup final comes with even more added pressure than, say, an All-England final, as you are not just playing for yourself but your country too. And so going into this match as favourites with so much expectation on their shoulders, as well as a loss meaning the end of the match, I think it was just too much. What also wouldn't have helped was that the Koreans had won their past 2 encounters. Although they were incredibly tight matches, just this fact alone would have made that pressure feel even more so. And finally, 3. The Koreans played amazing. They may have only had 3 disciplines strongly covered, they may have been vastly lacking in major final experience, they may have been weak in historically their strongest disciplines, and they may have been up against an incredibly strong team in China, but the Korean players delivered, and delivered consistently, not just in the final but throughout the entire tournament. And not only this, but even when adversity struck them, they never wavered. One huge example of this does come from the final. Throughout the tournament, Sean Wan-ho had been key in men's singles, winning all 3 of his matches, yet in the final due to injury he couldn't compete, and so Korea had to field Jun-Hyuk Jin, a young player who didn't stand much chance against Chen Long, the reigning Olympic champion at the time. Now, you might be thinking, well, even Sean Wan-ho would have struggled to get that point. And yes, you might be right, but it was also a very realistic possibility that he could have won. Sean Wan-ho always had close games with Chen Long. Just a year before at the Thomas Cup, it was Sean Wan-ho's win over Chen Long that kick-started Korea's eventual win over China at that match. Another shock team event result. So, the fact that Korea suddenly lost this opportunity, well, it would have made a slim chance of victory seem almost non-existent. Yet, they still did it. And you can see this sort of resilience by the Korean team throughout the tournament in all the disciplines. Sung Ji-hyun had a sublime tournament, winning so many key matches. Chang Yi-na and Lee So-hee defeating Chen and Jia in the final was huge, especially as they had lost their last 6 matches against the Chinese. And even the never-before partners Seo Sun-jae and Choi So-gyo, whilst they were no match for the Olympic champions in the final, did bring some key wins throughout the tournament. None more so than in the quarter-final against Chinese Taipei, a team that Korea lost to in the group stages. And of course, the mixed doubles, Choi So-gyo and Chae Yu-jung, will always be remembered as the pair who brought home the trophy, and their performance in that final is what sticks in most people's minds. But what people don't remember is that they had lost their previous 2 matches in the tournament. So, to dust themselves off and put those losses behind them and deliver that sort of performance under the most extraordinary of pressure, well, that deserves some credit. Just like the whole 2017 Korean team deserves some credit. This 2017 win by Korea may have been seen as a miracle. Still is actually, but I wanted to make sure their win wasn't only condensed as such, as it would overlook their incredible achievement, one that displayed their amazing teamwork, strong will, and fighting spirit.
For a 4th time at the Sudirman Cup, Korea stand on top of the podium. They arrived as underdogs and they leave as champions.